Chapter 1. Help! Someone's about to jump. Young lady, don't do anything rash. The commotion buzzed around me, drilling into my already aching head. Looking up, I saw her, Emily, my best friend, standing on the rooftop. Hadn't I already been shoved off a building and left to die, my body shattered beyond recognition? Yet here I was, back on the day Emily pretended to jump. Maybe even fate was disgusted by those two scumbags. I fixed my gaze on the figure perched on the 18th floor rooftop, my eyes growing cold and sharp. Emily, this time, you won't fool me. Not a single thing of mine, not my life, not my possessions, will you take again. All you can have are those two pieces of trash. I hung up the call to the police and borrowed a megaphone from a nearby vendor, carefully masking my intent with a veneer of panic. Oh my God. Emily. Even if you've been scammed out of all your money and are planning to sell a kidney to repay your debts, you can't jump. I shouted dramatically. Emily wavered at the rooftop's edge, teetering but never stepping past the railing. If I hadn't been paying close attention, I wouldn't have noticed her hands gripping the railing tightly, shaking it just enough to fake a scene. In my past life, I had fallen for her act, rushing upstairs in blind panic. My brother, Jason, her loyal admirer of many years, had refused to stop me. Instead of persuading her to back down, he told me not to interfere. He looked so distraught, yet his lips had curved into a smile he couldn't suppress. Did he really think Emily was faking her death to run off with him and start a new life? It turned out I wasn't the only one deceived. But I was the only one gullible enough to let it ruin me. In my past life, Jason didn't stop me out of concern. No, he didn't care about my safety. He only worried I'd expose Emily's fake death and derail her plan to leave the country. Even as I fell to my death, guilt weighed heavily on me for what I thought would be Jason's heartbreak. How naive I was. Emily had run off with my boyfriend, Lucas, barely a heartbeat later. And Jason? He chased after them like a fool. The three of them ended up together, living happily ever after. But not in this life. This time, I stayed hidden in the crowd. I didn't call the police. No safety cushions were laid out below. Emily didn't last long, she fainted and was quickly carried off to the hospital by some heroic bystanders. The crowd dispersed within minutes, their murmurs of praise fading. Meanwhile, Jason stayed behind, theatrically lamenting how he couldn't live without Emily. I rolled my eyes. Seriously? Feigning worry, I climbed into the ambulance. Inside, paramedics were diligently assessing Emily's condition. Doctor, I asked with an air of concern, my friend has uterine cancer. Could today's emotional distress have worsened it? Shouldn't we do an ultrasound to check her uterus? Jason froze. Guilt flickered across his face as he hastily waved off my suggestion. Sis, I'm a doctor too. There's no need for further tests, he said, his tone forced and unnatural. I narrowed my eyes, stifling a laugh. No need for tests, or nothing to test for? What uterine cancer? She dared to sell a kidney with that kind of diagnosis? She was bold enough to spin such outrageous lies, just to stage her fake death. I was such a fool in my past life. I'd even considered selling the house my parents left me, raising $1 million to cover her treatment. All the while, I had no idea I was being sold out. As soon as Emily was admitted to the hospital, Lucas came rushing to her bedside. Chapter 2. He carefully wiped Emily's face and hands, his movements unusually gentle. If I hadn't known the truth about their relationship, I might have thought Lucas's mortician instincts were kicking in again. How's Emily? What did the ER doctor say? Lucas's casual question made Jason frown. Lucas, since when are you so familiar with my friend? I don't remember introducing you to. My abrupt question caught Lucas off guard. He avoided my gaze, guilt written all over his face. He busied himself with adjusting Emily's hair, pretending it was just like preparing a body for a funeral. I almost burst out laughing. This is a living, breathing person, what are you doing? Sensing the awkward tension, Jason quickly stepped in to smooth things over. Lucas is my college roommate. He's seen Emily before, but they're not exactly close. Not close? What a poorly told lie. Noticing my skeptical expression, Jason took the opportunity to scold me. He accused me of neglecting Emily, blaming me for her developing uterine cancer at such a young age. I sneered internally. Girlfriend? She's only toying with you. On the surface, though, I put on a worried, remorseful face, acting as though I was wholeheartedly trying to help Emily. Brother, you're right. I've made up my mind. I'm going to sell the villa Dad left us to pay for Emily's chemotherapy. At that, both men's faces visibly stiffened. If Emily wanted to put on a show, I'd play along, thoroughly. First, I'd make sure her uterus was removed, then shave her head, and then let her drown in her own misery, step by step. Lucas, however, placed a hand on my head, his voice dripping with false sincerity. Emily's so lucky to have a friend like you, but she's terminally ill. We shouldn't waste money on futile treatments. We need to respect her wishes. Jason snorted, his tone dripping with disdain. Are you a doctor, or am I? Stop spouting nonsense. If chemo makes Emily lose her hair and it upsets her, I'll hold you responsible. I let out a soft, choked sob, pretending to be overwhelmed. But Emily is still so young. How can we give up on her now? If you won't treat her, I will. While we were in the ambulance, I contacted the best specialist. We'll start by removing her uterus, it's the only way to save her life. As I expected, both men froze, their voices overlapping in protest. No. I turned to Jason, my gaze cold and unrelenting. You keep saying you love Emily and want to protect her for the rest of your life. Yet, as her attending physician, you're standing by and letting her die? Jason faltered, his words tumbling over each other as he desperately tried to explain himself. Over and over, he professed his loyalty to the woman lying on the hospital bed. Even Lucas, usually composed, was now visibly agitated, his face flushed with anger. If you remove Emily's uterus, you'll ruin her entire life. Without waiting for a response, he scooped Emily up in his arms and bolted for the door. How strange. In my past life, how had I not noticed the depth of Lucas and Emily's connection? Watching their retreating figures, I moved to follow, but Jason, quickly stepped in to block my path. His stance was firm, he wasn't going to let me through. I pulled out my phone, chuckling darkly. Fine, I won't go. But the bodyguards at the door will make sure Emily gets to the operating room. Look, she's already on the operating table. Jason's eyes widened in panic. Without another word, he rushed off. Meanwhile, Emily had tried to resist in the operating room, but a swift dose of anesthesia rendered her motionless. When she woke up, the three of them would undoubtedly be thrown into chaos once again. Perfect. Feigning worry, I left the operating room with a satisfied smile. My dear Emily, you'd better have the strength to endure this. Chapter 3. After leaving the hospital, I immediately contacted a real estate agent to sell the villa my parents had left me. However, when I got home, I realized the property deed was missing. A quick investigation revealed the truth. Jason had transferred the villa, worth $2 billion, to Emily. The house my family had lived in for over a decade, gone just like that. He didn't even ask me. This bootlicking brother didn't see me as family at all. But my instincts told me there was more to uncover. It wasn't long before I found out that the funeral home I had opened in Lucas's name had been sold off as well. Emily must have orchestrated everything in preparation for her grand escape. With her plan to fake her death and flee, she was squeezing every last penny out of us. A chill settled deep in my chest. Late that night, as I mulled over my next steps, my phone rang incessantly. When I picked up, Lucas's sorrowful voice spilled through the line. Anna, your friend Emily, she took sleeping pills and killed herself. Her body's been brought to my funeral home. I'm so sorry. I pinched my thigh hard to force a shaky sob into my voice. What? Emily, how could she? I'm coming right away. The moment I hung up, I let out a cold laugh. Trying to fake your death and run off with the money? Not so fast. I grabbed a box of medicine and sped to Lucas's funeral home. There she was, lying in the coffin. Emily's complexion was flawless, rosy cheeks, smooth skin, not a blemish in sight. If I hadn't been told she was dead, I'd have thought she was just taking a nap. Terminal cancer patients don't look this healthy. Let's see how far you take this act. With a loud bang, I flipped the coffin over. Emily tumbled out, hitting the floor with a grimace. She hadn't even bothered to take a sedative to make her death convincing. Did she think I was an idiot? Lucas, frozen in shock, tried to stop me, but I was quicker. I lunged at Emily, throwing myself on her back as I wailed. My dear friend. Didn't we save your life by removing your uterus? How could you leave us like this? Didn't we agree to forget each other once we struck it rich? What will I do if you're gone? I pressed down on her, pretending to cry while weakly pounding her back. Oh, she's tougher than I thought. Her face turned bright red, her heartbeat raced, it only confirmed my suspicions. She was furious. Lucas feigned indignation, scolding me with exaggerated concern. Anna, I worked so hard to make Emily look presentable. Now you've gone and ruined everything by tossing her to the ground. I pinched my thigh hard again, tears streaming as I sobbed even louder. You don't understand. I saw a news story once about someone saving a woman in a funeral home. They thought she was dead, but she only had a temporary heart stoppage. Beating her wasn't enough to bring her back. Maybe I need to try something else. Without hesitation, I pulled out my phone and called for backup. Moments later, a towering 6-foot-tall black man strode into the room. Lucas was completely dumbfounded, scrambling to produce Emily's so-called suicide note. Huh, what new trick are you trying now? I snatched the paper from his trembling hands, skimming through it quickly before reading the last few lines aloud. Anna, I've transferred ownership of my restaurant to you, with Jason's help. I hope you'll manage it well. Don't thank me. How malicious could she be? Her restaurant had been shut down due to filthy kitchens and numerous health violations. On top of that, it was drowning in debt. She wanted to dump this disaster into my lap? Her scheming was so blatant, I could practically feel her abacus beads flying into my face. Chapter 4. Jason arrived late, just in time to hear Lucas mention my good idea for saving Emily. He pointed at me, cursing, accusing me of being heartless for insulting Emily, even after her death. You're not a doctor, so stop interfering. This method is unscientific. You're just causing trouble. Anger flared in his eyes as he lunged toward me, but I dodged, letting Lucas absorb the blow. To my surprise, Lucas remained remarkably calm. He gently pulled Jason away, advising me to show respect for the deceased. I let out a heavy sigh. Fine. If you think my method is unscientific, I'll use a more scientific approach. Under their confused gazes, I retrieved a pack of emetics from my bag and forced them into Emily's mouth. She was lying on the floor, fully aware of what was happening, but unable to stop me as I pried open her mouth. She couldn't swallow them or spit them out. In the end, Emily survived. She vomited violently, the emetics working almost immediately, making her gag and retch up bile. I clapped my hands in satisfaction. See? Traditional medicine with cow dung emetics works wonders. The expressions on the three faces were priceless. Emily must have despised me in that moment, but she was stuck. Jason, relieved to see her awake, rushed her to the hospital. She's in critical condition. We need to save her. I glanced at Lucas, who seemed unusually anxious, pretending not to notice. Why is your funeral home empty at night? I asked innocently. Lucas stumbled over his words, explaining that he had given his staff the night off, so he was alone. All right, Lucas, you stay here. I'll go to the hospital. With the bodyguard I hired keeping a close eye on him, Lucas was effectively trapped in the crematorium. He could only watch helplessly as Jason rushed Emily to the hospital, then left. His fists clenched, and his eyes darkened with frustration. In the hospital ER, the constant beeping of the machines filled the room. Jason emerged, eyes red from exhaustion. Emily's organs failed. She didn't make it. I pretended to be shocked. Wasn't it uterine cancer? What does that have to do with other organs failing? This sounds like medical malpractice. I'll investigate and sue the hospital. Jason's panic was palpable as he glared at me. You revived her with those emetics, but it was just a final burst of energy before death. Even if you sue, it won't make a difference. Accept it. I wiped away fake tears, pretending to be heartbroken, and rushed into the ER. There, on the operating table, Emily lay pale, her body limp. Her limbs were cold, her once beautiful face now drained of color. No wonder Emily had kept Jason dangling for years. He was rich, handsome, and smart, completely devoted to her. Just as I admired Jason's realistic fake death plan, a nurse came in with news: Jason had committed suicide. He had drunk pesticide, following Emily in death. What a devoted fool, faking death together with her. No matter what tricks they tried, I wouldn't let them get away with it. My acting skills reached their peak. After giving Jason a few hard slaps to confirm he was unconscious, I positioned both him and Emily's bodies next to each other, preparing them for cremation. The nurse protested. Your brother specifically said he wanted a burial, not cremation. Fine, I said dismissively, we'll bury him back home. I'll take him to the funeral home first. Chapter 5. Seeing how easily I was deceived, the nurse left for the day. I took Jason's body to Lucas's funeral home. Lucas's eyes instantly grew strange when he heard that Jason had committed suicide. I mentioned my plan to bury him, but Lucas urgently advised me to cremate him first and then take the ashes for burial. Otherwise, the long journey will spoil the body, he added, his eagerness clear. His hasty behavior made it obvious that he couldn't wait to see Jason disposed of. I covered Jason with a white cloth and told Lucas I'd wait a few days before proceeding, then quickly ushered him out. That night, I had the bodyguard sneak Jason out of the funeral home and replace him with the unconscious Emily. The next morning, Lucas, with dark circles under his eyes, came to persuade me again. This time, I agreed without hesitation. Inside the crematorium, Emily lay under the white cloth. As I looked closely, I saw her finger twitch. What a bummer. The sleeping pills must be wearing off. Just then, my phone rang. It was Jason. He must have woken up and noticed Emily was missing, making him suspicious. I glanced at the messages he'd sent earlier. You damn brat. Where's my Emily? If you've harmed her, I'll have you locked up for life. I asked the nurse at the hospital. You took Emily to the funeral home? If you dare cremate her, I'll kill you. How strange. Brother, didn't you commit suicide? How are you still alive? I couldn't pass up this opportunity. It was time to act. I pressed down on Emily's white cloth, pretending to sob. Brother, how could you be so heartless? Mom and Dad died in that car accident, and now you've taken your own life too? Why leave me all alone? I'll take you back home, please wake up. However, Lucas, sensing things might drag on, gently pulled me away. Without a word, he shoved the body into the furnace. Just one press of a button, and Emily would be burned alive. As the iron lid slammed shut, I looked at Emily beneath the cloth, a storm of emotions flooding through me. In my previous life, I gave you everything, only for you to trample on my corpse, running off with my boyfriend. You even deceived my foolish brother. You took every last penny of the inheritance my parents left behind. Don't blame me for being ruthless now. Just as Lucas reached for the cremation button, a noise came from the furnace. The soundproofing was excellent, but I knew Emily was awake, calling for help. Damn, would Lucas hear it? I turned and saw Jason, pinned down by the bodyguards outside, rushing to stop us. Perfect timing. Fearing failure, I grabbed Lucas's hand, feigning fear. Do you think this place is haunted? Or is it possible that Jason isn't really dead? Lucas, terrified that the fake body of my brother would be rescued, hastily responded. There's no such thing as ghosts. You must have imagined it. I didn't hear anything. He pressed the cremation button. In the next moment, Jason, bruised and battered, burst through the door. No. Chapter 6. A heart-wrenching scream burst from the furnace. But it was too late. Emily had already been burned alive. Her anguished cries seemed to echo in the room, lingering like a haunting melody. Lucas turned to see Jason, alive and well, standing before him. His eyes widened in disbelief, nearly bulging out of their sockets. You? How are you still alive? Jason grabbed Lucas by the collar, his fury exploding into a punch. I told you to wait. Are you deaf? Why didn't you listen? The two of them tumbled to the floor, grappling furiously. Just then, the real owner of the funeral home stormed into the room. Who are you people? What's going on here? Stop this nonsense, you're ruining my grand opening. He strode toward the furnace and opened it. Inside was a charred body. Though the corpse hadn't been reduced to ashes, Emily's face was still faintly recognizable. Jason instantly abandoned the fight, rushing to the furnace. Seeing Emily's lifeless, burnt remains, his face twisted in anguish. He turned to me, his voice seething with rage. I knew it. You're working with the funeral home. You're the one who killed her. The owner, visibly trembling at the sight of the unidentified burnt corpse, quickly stepped back and called the police. Fearing he'd be implicated, he pulled out his phone and began live-streaming the scene for evidence. I seized the moment to put on my best performance. Jason, you're alive. That's amazing. But why is Emily being cremated instead of you? But it's fine, didn't Emily pass away from organ failure yesterday? You were her attending physician. I know you're heartbroken, but she's gone now. Please, let her rest in peace. Aware of the camera, I carefully explained the situation with deliberate clarity. Jason, you didn't see this coming, did you? The show you staged last night has become the very reason for your downfall today. Sure enough, Lucas couldn't keep quiet any longer. He stumbled toward the furnace, his trembling hands brushing against Emily's charred, blackened face. Emily. How could it be you? No. Why wasn't it Jason instead? Tears streaked his face as he turned to Jason, his voice breaking with frustration and anger. Why didn't you consult me first? Emily was fine, but you had to come up with that idiotic plan for her to fake illness and death. You moron. If you wanted to stage Emily's fake death, you should have told me beforehand. Jason's face flushed red with anger, veins bulging on his forehead. He swung back toward me, his fingers shaking as he pointed accusingly. She's the one who killed Emily. Blaming me won't fix anything. She has to pay. Lucas, eyes reddened with grief, suddenly turned his burning gaze on me. Jason, I stammered, playing innocent as tears streamed down my face. Emily was pounding on the furnace door for help, but Lucas ignored her and pressed the button to burn her alive. If someone must pay, then let it be the real murderer. Call the police and have Lucas arrested. Chapter 7. My words successfully sowed discord. Jason, realizing the truth, shouted. Lucas, you wanted to burn me alive so you could run off with Emily. Lucas turned bright red, utterly speechless. I couldn't even begin to imagine the chaos unfolding in the livestream comments section. Seizing the moment, I stepped forward and delivered my final bombshell. Jason, is it true? Emily and my boyfriend planned to fake her death and run away together? Jason froze, realizing he had let the truth slip. He avoided my gaze, his guilt written all over his face. I squeezed out a few tears and slapped Lucas hard across the face, twice. I gave you everything, funded your business, gave you a house, handed you money, and you betrayed me with my best friend. I grabbed Lucas by the arm and dragged him to the funeral director. In front of the livestream audience, I cried and spilled every sordid detail. My so-called best friend faked having cancer to steal my boyfriend. And my brother, Jason, a doctor, helped her fake her death. If you two truly loved each other, I would have stepped aside. Why go to such lengths to stage a fake death? What's the plan here? Stick me with her failing restaurant, drown me in debt, while you two take off and live the high life abroad? Do you see me as nothing but an ATM? Tears streamed down my face, perfectly timed to evoke sympathy from the viewers. The funeral director, grasping the situation, zoomed the camera in on Lucas and Jason, capturing their panicked and guilty expressions. He even read some of the viewers' comments aloud. Ugh. In this day and age, you need to watch out for your best friends and scumbag men. That pretty boy Lucas is disgusting, cheating while pretending to be innocent. What a snake. Dr. Jason is vile. How dare he blame his sister when his own girlfriend was cheating? Serves him right for being a pushover. Wait, does Lucas even have a valid death certificate for the cremation? Who gave him the right to act like God? The flood of criticism was relentless, tearing apart every gap in their story. How wonderfully thorough these netizens were. The police soon arrived and took Emily's body to the station for investigation. I cooperated fully, handing over all the hospital receipts I had from accompanying Emily to her cancer treatments. Why did I have these records? Simple, Emily had always been scheming for money. She tricked me into paying for her treatments through Jason's assistant, saying it was more convenient that way. Each visit cost me thousands, and by the end, Emily had pocketed over $20,000. Given her long history of fraud, the police quickly believed that I had been an unwitting participant in her scam. Under intense questioning, Jason, overwhelmed and nervous, spilled everything. As for Lucas, he had killed the woman he supposedly loved most. Now, not only did he want me to suffer, but he also wanted Jason, his rival, to go down with him. However, Lucas, ever the cunning one, shifted all the blame onto Jason. Officers, he claimed, it was Anna's brother, Jason, who orchestrated the entire thing. He forged medical records, coordinated with doctors and nurses, and even faked the death certificate. I admit I was morally in the wrong, but I didn't break any laws. The case had garnered immense public attention and continued to dominate local trending topics. Determined to resolve it quickly and provide answers to the public, the police worked through the night to gather evidence at the hospital. Jason, hot-headed and reckless, completely lost his temper during questioning. In a fit of rage, he even attacked the officers with a knife. That sealed his fate. Jason was immediately fired from the hospital and sentenced to 10 years in prison without the possibility of appeal. As for Lucas, since I had been the one who insisted on cremating Jason's body, he avoided any charges of involuntary manslaughter. He was only held accountable for gross negligence, which didn't carry significant legal consequences. I thought that after this dramatic turn of events, the public outcry would gradually fade. But the next morning, my worst fears were realized. The headlines had flipped against me. Breaking news, the restaurant Spicy Haven linked to a suspicious death, owner exposed as the woman behind the funeral hoax. Chapter 8. I read the online comments. Emily's nationwide chain of restaurants hadn't just closed for health violations. There had been a death. The filthy kitchen was bad enough, but she had the chef add anti-diarrheal drugs to the food. A customer had a severe allergic reaction and died. She transferred the restaurant to me to avoid prison. I wasn't just an ATM, I was a scapegoat. No wonder she was in such a hurry to leave the country. I thought she just wanted my boyfriend and brother. She was far more ruthless than I imagined. I rushed to Spicy Haven. A crowd of angry citizens had gathered. Seeing me, they hurled rotten eggs and vegetables. Look, this heartless owner caused a death and didn't pay or go to jail. Now she's killed her friend too. Despicable. The mention of Emily made everything clear. This was Lucas's revenge. A few thugs, seeing me hide inside, smashed the glass door, threatening to kill me if I didn't turn myself in. I grabbed the kitchen surveillance footage and called the police. Facing the hostile crowd, I stood my ground. You accuse me of causing a death and demand I go to jail. I've called the police. Let's see who's guilty. To clarify, this restaurant was Emily's. I knew nothing of her actions. If you continue this, I'll take legal action. The crowd loved to play dirty. At the sound of sirens, they scattered. A few stubborn ones stayed, glaring at me. An elderly woman, eyes red, said, "Emily's dead, so you can say anything. But my daughter died in your restaurant. You must pay." At the station, the police reviewed the footage, showing Emily instructing the chef to add the drug. The elderly woman was stunned. Her daughter had died due to this unscrupulous business. My lawyer defended me well, presenting evidence of Jason's illegal transfer of ownership. It took time, but I cleared myself of Emily's mess. Though she was dead, Jason faced additional charges. He had no hope of release, likely spending his life in prison. Now, only the heartless Lucas remained free. Chapter 9. I hired a private investigator to follow Lucas. I wanted to know when he and Emily had started their affair. What I found was shocking. After selling the funeral home, Lucas became an obstetrics assistant at a high-end, secretive hospital. It catered to the elite, a haven for surrogate pregnancies. Rumor had it that celebrities, entrepreneurs, and even government officials were clients. Membership alone cost $1 million. Emily had mentioned selling herself after her family went bankrupt. She must have met Lucas then. Whether he seduced her or she went willingly, I didn't know. I disguised myself, bringing a reporter posing as my husband to Lucas's hospital. I entered with authority. "Lucas, you scumbag. Come out. You cheated on me and had my friend bear your child. You deserve to die." My bodyguard shouted too. Lucas, seeing me, frowned. "Anna, stop making things up. I have nothing to do with your friend." Still denying it. "You dare say that? Why would she bear your child? I have her prenatal records." Lucas, seeing the evidence, looked confused. The hospital required all surrogates to have checkups there. But Emily had gone to a regular hospital once. This child must have been special. "Fine. You cheated with my friend, made her bear your child, and planned to fake her death to flee. Beat him up." I watched as the bodyguard pinned Lucas down, kicking him. "Let's see how long you can keep quiet. Keep beating him until he admits the child is his." Lucas, on the floor, stared at Emily's records, silent. The staff couldn't stand it. "Miss Zhao, stop. Emily's child isn't his. She was a surrogate here. You misunderstood." "Really? Are you in charge? Can you guarantee that?" The man nodded, fearing a scandal. But he didn't know, where there's a reporter, there's news. My reporter friend, riding the wave of our cremation scandal, rushed to expose Lucas's secrets. The article revealed Lucas's hospital lured girls into surrogacy. The hospital was soon shut down. The legal representative was my foolish brother. Now he could die in prison. Lucas insisted he only did ultrasounds, knowing nothing else. Until I showed evidence of Emily's surrogacy. He fell silent. I was curious. What happened to Emily's child? Chapter 10. Before Lucas's charges were finalized, he kept appealing for bail. I searched for clues about Emily's family bankruptcy, finding nothing. Until I found my mother's early uterine cancer diagnosis. I realized I'd been looking in the wrong direction. My father wanted another child, but my mother's cancer led to a hysterectomy. She couldn't conceive. So they found a surrogate, Emily, whose family had just gone bankrupt. I was studying abroad, unaware of her situation. Desperate, she met Lucas and was lured into surrogacy. My father, knowing she was my friend, chose her to humiliate her. She became the land. She and Lucas fell in love, planning to keep the child and run away. Jason discovered this. Thinking the child was Lucas's, he attacked him. Emily, trying to intervene, was pushed, losing the baby. She couldn't pay her father's debts. Her parents jumped from a building, dying before her eyes. No wonder she hated me, wishing me dead. Jason, learning the child's origin, distanced himself from me. He blamed me for Emily's surrogacy. Emily, losing the baby and her parents, attempted suicide. Lucas stopped her. He took her away, plotting revenge on my family. But justice prevailed. I found the truth about my parents' car accident. Draining the lake, I sent the submerged car for inspection. The brakes had been tampered with. Tracing the evidence, I found Lucas had contacted our driver. Lucas had hidden well, but not alone. Jason knew everything, hiding the truth for Emily. To them, I was an outsider. But this outsider sent them to hell. Lucas was sentenced to life for murder and illegal surrogacy. He and Jason met in prison. I scattered Emily's ashes to the wind. In the next life, let's not be friends. Goodbye.